Hi, my name is Carlos, and this is my Child of Alara deck. Alright, so this deck is built around the ability to wrath the board whenever Child of Alara goes to the graveyard, and is built to do that a number of times throughout the game. We'll start with the mana base. This starts with 10 fetch lands, 10 dual lands, and only 9 shock lands. The one that's missing is the Blood Crypt, because that color combination is not particularly helpful. The deck will tend to fetch up white-based dual lands first, mostly because of the power of Emeria the Sky Ruin. So if you don't need multiple colors that are not white, then you'll be tutoring up the white lands first and foremost. And this is the one basic land in the deck. It's snow-covered just for Mouth of Ronom. And then these are the kind of power cards in the deck. These are the cards that let you explode in the early game, so like Mox Diamond, and then cards that let you get multiple land drops. This deck tends to use lands as spells, and so the ability to play multiple lands per turn is really crucial to the deck's power. Summer Bloom in particular is incredibly powerful because it's like drawing a million cards and being able to play all of them at once because you get so many land drops. Mana Bomb lets you discard your hand early on to get way ahead. Diamond Valley is really powerful in this deck because wrapping the board with Child when you sacrifice it and gaining 6 life is incredibly powerful. High Market does the same kind of thing. It's a little bit worse, but still a necessity. The Tabernacle at Pendrell Vale is... I built this deck as an excuse to play with Tabernacle. Being able to control token swarms and have an uncounterable way to sacrifice Child of Alara is very good. Emeria is one of your late game engines. Being able to recur any creature, especially Child of Alara or Sun Titan, is very good. Glacial Chasm is a card that a lot of decks just can't beat. The ability to prevent all damage is very tough for people, especially when they don't run their strip mines. Dryad Arbor is something that a lot of people don't respect, but it's very good here. You can lock people out with Emeria and Dryad Arbor and Glacial Chasm, or just gain life off of Zurin Orb. Tolaria West is very good. You can recur lands all kinds of different ways, and the ability to tutor for whatever one you want whenever you can is very good. We have 3 cycling lands, mostly for the interaction with Tilling Tree Folk and Life from the Loam. Nomad Stadium is a great way to keep your life total up. You'll be paying life for Glacial Chasm, and you will be the archenemy of the table very frequently. So buffering your life total is very good. Nantuko Monastery and Mishra's Factory are 2 of your ways to sort of get in for damage whenever you can. Riftstone Portal is good because it lets your Maze of Ith and your Glacial Chasm and your Tabernacle tap for mana when they wouldn't normally. Kor Haven is the second Maze of Ith effect in this deck. It's not quite as good, but it gets the job done. Cephalid Coliseum is great for stocking a graveyard. It's absurd when you start dredging Life from the Loam. You normally have a ton of cards in your hand, and so being able to discard the lands and keep the spells is very good. Mouth of Ronom is something that I'm testing for now as a way to answer some of the cheaper, more threatening generals over the course of a long game. It's easier to recur this than it is to keep playing their general. Maze of Ith is Maze of Ith. It's very good. This deck takes advantage of it very well. Strip Mine is something that the deck is very capable of using. You typically want to either Strip Mine lock or Glacial Chasm lock or Child lock the board, and whichever one is hardest to deal with is the one that's going to win the game. Vesuva is typically here to copy Emeria or Valakut or Glacial Chasm. It offers a ton of utility all the time. You can sacrifice it and rebuy it and copy something again. It's definitely one of the best lands in the deck. Volrath Stronghold copies gets you back Child of Alara or key creatures. Horizon Canopy is not quite as good as the cycling lands, but once you get Crucible of Worlds and multiple play extra land effects, it can be a very powerful draw engine. Petrified Field is a slow but difficult to disrupt recursion engine. Academy Ruins is it's mostly there to recur Crucible of Worlds, but it also does a good job of recurring Nim Deathmantle. Ojugabog is the It's the necessary graveyard hate. You can recur it pretty easily, bounce it pretty easily, and use it over and over again. You have a lot of really good utility lands, so Deserted Temple does a really good job of letting you use them multiple times. The backbone of the deck is the amount of recursion that it has. You have things like Eternal Witness and Yawgmoth's Will and Crucible to let you play all these really powerful lands and spells over and over again and recur the ones that are very difficult for people to deal with. Genesis is definitely one of the weakest effects, but it's very difficult to disrupt and it forces graveyard hate on its own, so it does do its job. Sun Titan is really easy to abuse in this deck, mostly because of the interaction with Sun Titan and Nimdeath Mantle, where you can sacrifice Sun Titan to protect the Nimdeath Mantle from different destruction effects. This is definitely one of the backbones of the deck. Life from the Loam lets you do some of the most broken things in the entire deck. It stocks your graveyard, it lets you rebuy all of your great lands. It gives you a lot of resilience in the long games. And Nimdeath Mantle is absurd with all the comes into play effects in the deck. You have sacrifice outlets like Diamond Valley to rebuy it and do stupid, unfair things with Nimdeath Mantle. Tilling Treefolk is like another copy of Life from the Loam. It's much worse, but it does do its job. You just need as much recursion for your lands as possible, and this gets the job done. Zeranorb is there for the lock with Glacial Chasm and recursion. You pay the upkeep once and then sacrifice Glacial Chasm to Zeranorb to regain your 2 life back. The deck packs a ton of tutors so that you can find all of the good lands that you need. Night of the Reliquary is a really good win condition, and it also serves as a tutor. Vampiric Tutor is obviously very good. Natural Order with Dryad Arbor usually goes and gets Primeval Titan, which will tend to end the game very quickly. Crop Rotation is one of the best utility spells in the deck because you can get an instant speed Bojukabog or Glacial Chasm or any number of other things. Realms Uncharted is like Gifts Ungiven for this deck. You usually start with Tolaria West and Petrified Field and then just whatever lands you need at the time. Demonic Tutor. Enlightened Tutor usually gets Crucible of Worlds. Intuition usually gets Life from the Loam and very good lands. Gamble, you usually want to play this either when you have Life from the Loam or no cards in hand, because then it's just another copy of Entomb, which works very well with the amount of recursion that the deck has. Drift of Phantasms is great because you have a number of important 3s like Azusa, Wargate, and Crucible of Worlds, and is also a source of life with Diamond Valley. When you have a number of lands in play, this is just better than Reap and Sow when you have the number of lands that this deck needs. It also gets Crucible and Prismatic Omen and does a lot of awesome things. Survival of the Fittest is great with Dryad Arbor, with Tilling Treefolk. You can set up your entire engine just with Survival, even though you don't run a ton of creatures. Sensei's Divining Top is great for selection. You run all the fetches in the world, and it's very powerful. Sylvan Library is a great draw engine. You gain a ton of life. Brainstorm is... Usually I don't like the effect in Commander, but it's very good here just because of the number of shuffle effects and the card selection that you need. And Jace does the same thing, but every turn. The utility of bouncing your guys is not that important, and I have won multiple games by ultimating Jace on everyone at the table, so he's very good here. Visions of Beyond is something that I'm testing. In the late game, this deck does tend to run out of steam, and you do need the extra card advantage to get somewhere. Ad Nauseam is the card advantage that you need to get there. The deck runs 60-ish lands most of the time, and so you'll be able to draw 10-ish cards pretty easily off of this. Same with Treasure Hunt, you'll usually get 4 or 5 cards off of it. Dark Confine is very good with the card selection that you have with the number of lands. It's better than Dark Tutelage. Maelstrom Pulse is your obligatory, generic removal. You need answers to different things. This is my answer to Blood Moon in general. Oblivion Stone is there for the interaction with Sun Titan and a backup plan for Child. You need a way to continue to wrap the board if Child gets tucked into your library. And lastly, we've got some way to win the game. Primeval Titan tends to get Valakut or Emeria to start locking up the game. With Summer Bloom and Yawgmoth's Will and all kinds of things like that, you will get to play a ton of lands with Valakut and trigger it a million times. It goes with your Prismatic Omen. All your lands are all basic land types. You deal a million damage to them. You play as many lands as you can. It's also very good with Emeria. Worm Harvest is a backup plan. If your recursion gets dealt with, you can just start worm harvesting and getting 15, 20 tokens per iteration. And Moloku is great for buying back different lands with comes into play effects. It's great with mana bonds, and it's a very powerful win condition. Thanks for watching CMDR decks. Please subscribe and favorite.